Hello YouTube, this is Daniel Freeman with part 8 of my Blender Basics series, and today we will actually be unwrapping the Dolphin. So let's get back into that model. Hopefully you saved it somewhere you can remember. And we're going to be learning about some more advanced UV functions. That'll be different UV unwrapping options, effective welding for UV maps, and improving your UV layouts in general. So once you open up your Dolphin folder, you should have something like what you see here. Now you can change this into the UV image editor window. And that's one of the other handy things about modeling with two windows, is that once you're done modeling, you can just change this into the UV window for UV unwrapping. Alright, now let's get right into it. Now, as you can see, this is a lot more complex than a cube. So we're going to have to think very carefully about where we want to put our seams for this model. So I'm going to start with the fins because those are the most obvious thing. I'm just going to make a seam here and then show you different unwrapping modes. So one of the things that you want to think about when you're unwrapping is you want to have just simple shapes. So basically divide it into simple manageable shapes. And think about your seams as well, which I will talk about later. So remember, Control E, mark seam. And now if I unwrap this as is, actually let me show you another handy function. If you click on Face Select, hover over something and press L, it will actually select a little something within the seams. So this is the portion that's going to be unwrapped based on the seam that I just made. So remember, Face and then L. That's going to be very useful later. If I unwrap this as is, you'll see it's a mess. So this is one of the things about UV unwrapping and just UV in general, is that you have to mark the seams very carefully. So this was not a good job of marking the seams because unwrapping it formed a big mess like this. What I actually need to do is I need to take this line right here and I need to unwrap it such that it will just sort of fold open. And I will show you what I mean by unwrapping right here. So you got to think about it as if this dolphin were not on the computer, but as if it were also made out of paper, like the cube that we made, and you're trying to lay it out flat on a surface. So think about how you would go about doing that, and that's how you should be going about making your seams. This is one of the most complicated processes, at least for me, of 3D modeling. So it's okay not to get it completely right the first time. It's going to take a while. So as you can see, that's already a lot better. Let me see which face is which. So let's see that. Okay, that's down there. Alright, so that looks good. I think that is a good start. Although I do... Okay, so I like that. So there's our first fin. Now you can see that the sizes of, you can see that this face as compared to this face is about the same. So you've got to make sure that your proportions are good. That's the word I was looking for. Alright, so let's just make that a little bit smaller. Now this is what you're going to want to do. A lot of people, or at least I was tempted to just try and unwrap the entire model at once, but that's a bad idea. You need to unwrap things individually, make sure that they all look good, and then move on to the next part. So the easiest thing to unwrap now is actually just going to be this fin, because it'll act the same as this. They're the exact same shape. So I'm going to just leave that for now, and let me show you the different modes of unwrapping. So there are a couple of them. I'm not going to show you every single one, but this unwrap is just the default unwrap. So it's just, I don't really know how to explain it other than it's just going to take it and lay it out flat, just normally. And the next one, Smart UV Project, is something I have used a little bit in the past. It's probably not as good for organic models like this dolphin, but what it does is it gives you an angle limit, and based on that angle limit, it will split things into little pieces and try and arrange them in the most space efficient manner. So let me demonstrate that. So now it's split our fins into the manner that covers the most area without being completely distorted. Now the problem with this is, as you can see, it breaks it apart into little pieces. So when you do this, you're going to have to reattach them through something called welding. And sometimes this is necessary because sometimes when you just do a default unwrap, it will it'll mess it up and distort things so much that you can't possibly fix it, especially if you need a very detailed texture, and sometimes it just messes things up. So this can be a good option, but I will show you how to weld after I show you the next one, which is project from view. And as you can see, this shape here matches the shape we're seeing now. It literally takes the view that you have and just projects it. So you can change the angle, unwrap, project from view, and that can be handy sometimes. It depends. If you have, for example, if you're making a cylinder shape, a cylinder or a sphere, and you just want to put a very simple little gradient on that can be, project from view can work. It's not going to be used. At least for me, I haven't made much use of it. I have every now and then. I used it for a handle of a gun one time to do a simple unwrap because it was too complex otherwise, but you'll find that it can be useful, but not so much. But I wouldn't discount it completely. Like I said, I've used it before too. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually do the Smart UV project. As I just showed you, I left it at the default values, and I'm going to attach these. And I will actually make a sheet with the different types of UV unwrapping just so you can look at it for reference, since it's something that is kind of tedious to learn, so it'd be nice to have a reference. I kind of wish I had a reference. This is probably one of the hardest things for me to learn. Actually, this was the hardest thing for me to learn, but thankfully I have it now. So what I just did there was I just moved this piece and clicked on two vertices. I'm going to undo it and show you again. So I took this piece, moved it closer to this fin, and now I'm going to attach these two vertices by clicking on weld. And as you can see, they're now attached together. So there's one thing to note with the weld function. If two vertices are not attached in the actual model, then welding is not going to attach them either. So let me show you right here. I'm going to click on these two vertices, which I don't believe are attached in the model. Click on weld, and now they're in the same spot, but they're not attached. So this is one way to know whether or not you have the right idea of where things are in this UV map. If you're welding and two vertices are not attached, you are trying to attach the wrong vertices. So that's something to keep in mind. Don't just go welding. After you weld, make sure that the two vertices are attached, so that way you know that you've got the correct idea. Alright, so let me just demonstrate again. I'm going to move this right here, and I'm going to be attaching all of these vertices, and then double checking to make sure that they actually should be next to each other by clicking on them. Okay, good. That's now the same vertice, so that means it's part of the same vertice in the model as well, which is what we want. Alright, awesome. There you go. So I'm going to proceed to try and attach everything. And I'm doing this. The unwrap for this was okay, but I want to demonstrate to you how to use this technique. So that's why I'm going through the rather laborious process of attaching these things. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm selecting different faces together to try and see where they attach. So I'm seeing that whatever is over here attaches over here. Let me just select everything. And now if I click on L, remember in face select, if I click on L here on the object itself, it highlights everything that's within a seam, a selection marked by a seam. So if I click L on here, it actually selects what you could call vertice islands, which are just little floating sections of vertices. So you see this isn't attached to any other vertices, so that's a little vertice island, and if I click on L, it will grab that separately. This is going to be extremely handy. So I think that I have shown you how to weld, and that's really what I wanted to show you. So I'm just going to leave it there and just do a normal unwrap since that actually looked okay. There you go. So I'm just going to leave this one at that. But again, now you should know how to do welding, because that's going to be extremely important later. Okay, let me see. I'm going to unwrap all of these fins and then unwrap the body. Now, I'm going to go through my thought process while I do this. And the reason I'm doing the fins first is because they are going to be distinct on the UV map. And also you have to think about what's going to give you a clean unwrap. And what I mean by that is, oh, that's the wrong button. There you go. Mark seam. What I mean by that is what's going to give you the least amount of distortion, because when your UV map or your texture map is distorted, then whatever texture you make is also going to be distorted. So you're going to be seeing a lot of just nasty stretching and pulling on your texture if you don't get the UV unwrapping right. So that's why I'm keeping things simple and just unwrapping little simple shapes within the more complicated model. And this is something that you would do no matter what model you had. You would be trying to simplify it as much as possible. So Control E, mark seam. Alright. Now again, this is going to take a lot of practice to get right. You're going to have to experiment and mess around with UV maps in your model until you get a satisfactory result. Okay, so I kind of like this one. Except that it distorts it too much at the top. So what I'm gonna do is, you can actually edit the UV maps the same way that you edit an object. So I can scale this, and I can grab it, and I can rotate it just like I can rotate and scale and grab the main object. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. If you get a lot of distortion, you can manually adjust it, or you can do the smart UV project and weld, which is probably going to be a better idea for this fin by the looks of it. Okay, so that's fine. I will just leave that as is for now, and I'll show you what I'm doing. So let me just, there you go. See, you hover over it, click on L, it selects that individual fin. Now I'm going to be unwrapping the tail, I guess. Yeah, sure, why not? Alright, the tail might actually be okay for... No, I was thinking I might do smart UV projection on the tail, but I had second thoughts. Alt-click. So if you remember from previous tutorials, Alt-click selects an edge loop. So I'm just gonna Alt-click to select this edge loop. Oop. And then Shift, if you click on Shift, you can select multiple things. So Shift, Alt-click selects multiple edge loops. I'm just going to isolate the tail, same way I isolated the fins. Remember, Control E, mark seam. And after you do so, be sure to go into face select mode and test that you have actually blocked out your selection by pressing on L. And if you press on L and your section that you've sort of isolated with the seams is highlighted, then you've done it right, and you're good to go. But let me just clear this seam, Control E, clear seam, and now you'll see that if I press on L, it should, okay, I actually need to, there you go, Control E, clear seam. Okay, now it's gone, and now if I press on L, it's going to select everything, because it's going through the barrier here because there's no seam here. So you have to make sure to block everything out. I'm just going to put that seam back quickly. Okay, so now we're good. And let's figure out, so if you remember what I said, that you should think about it as if this were made out of paper, and you're trying to lay it flat on a table without stretching or tearing the paper too much. So it looks like for this one, it'll be good if I made a seam over here and just kind of had it fold outwards. This is a lot of visual stuff, so if you're not a visual thinker, I apologize, because this is probably going to be kind of miserable. I hate to put it that way. I don't really like UV unwrapping, but it's very important because it allows you to work with textures, and if you make a good UV unwrapping, then your textures are going to be so much easier. And it looks like I have a little error with my model here. As you can see, this is not attaching. When I click on this vertex and this vertex, they're not attaching, which probably means that there's these are detached. If I grab this, okay, yeah, we got a little duplicate vertex. So let's go into here. If you remember the remove duplicate vertices, remove doubles, it's under this tools tab here. Now this should be good. Okay, there you go. So that's fixed. Remove doubles is awesome. Alright. Don't be too discouraged by this, because it's definitely, with practice, you can definitely do it. It takes time, just like anything else. And again, once it'll be completely worth it once you put the textures on. Because if you do a good job of this, then the textures will be a lot of fun to do. You really start to see your model come to life then. Let's see, Control E, mark seam. Alright, awesome. And L, whoops. The reason it selected everything when I pressed L there is because I wasn't in face select mode. It's just a little thing to remember. U unwrap. Huh. There you go. There's our fin unwrapped. And look, it did just what I said. It went here and it folded outwards this way and under here outwards that way. Alright. So I like the way that is, and you can see the jumble of things right here. We'll clear that up a little bit later after I've gotten all the fins. Alright, after this fin, I'm just going to do that quickly. The next thing to consider is going to be the face, and that's going to be a little more complicated. Not too much, though. Right, so let me know in the comments if this is all making sense. I want to make sure that I teach this well, since it's one of the most important things when it comes to putting on textures is actually UV unwrapping. Anything that I teach you about making textures it's cool and it's important, but this is really the thing that makes textures work. So I really want you to understand how this works and how to make a good UV map. So again, yeah, just let me know in the comments if this is helpful. Right, and I'm going to copy the same UV map or the same seams for this fin that I had in the other one, since they're identical. It's one of the other helpful things about having symmetrical models. Okay, let's do this. Control E, mark seam. Alright, those are identical now, and now let's get to the face. Now what I want to have is, eventually I want to have the body, I guess it looks kind of like a banana, so I'll use the analogy of a banana. I want it to be kind of like, have the body be like a banana that you can just peel open and lay flat. That sounds kind of weird, but that gives you a good visual representation of what we're trying to do. And that's not really going to happen with this nose, so I need to separate the part of the face that's not smooth. Let me show you what happens if I just unwrap this. Yeah, ton of distortion. As you can see, that's the nose, and these are vertices way back here, so it looks terrible basically. So we're gonna want to clean this up a little bit. So first of all, since this model doesn't have any eyes modeled into it, since that's a little bit more complicated, I'm just going to separate this. Actually, it's not too complicated. We could probably do that, but I guess I didn't put eyes into this model or any of my basic tutorial models, so we'll just leave that. Now if you want to add that later, you can. Let's mark seam. But anyway, what I was saying was, since it doesn't really have eyes, I can just normally I would take this entire head and make it separate with a little portion of eye, but I can just block out the mouth or the nose, or it's really both. Okay. Now let's do this. Just remember, think of it as a banana with vertices. Freedan Studios 2015. Okay. I think the most intense part about UV unwrapping is the amount of times that you click. One of the things you can do to make this less tedious is just listen to music. That's what I do. When I'm unwrapping my models, I listen to songs. It kind of makes it a little more fun. Okay, let's try this. Now if I'm correct, then it should split down here where I made this seam, and it should just open up or kind of peel outwards. Perfect. There you go. So see, it even looks like an unwrapped banana, kind of. Alright. Great, so that's how you make it look. As you can tell, this looks so much nicer than that mess that I showed you before because it was arranged in a organized manner. Right, now let's get to the mouth. Now I'm just going to separate the inside of the mouth from the outside. Alright. Let's see, I'm probably going to need to my zoom is going too much. I'm going to need to go into orthogonal mode. There you go. That way my zoom is not going to be so intense. And hopefully you remember the difference between orthogonal and perspective mode from the previous tutorials. And that perspective just gives actual perspective, and then orthogonal ignores perspective. Okay. Oh, that's strange. Whoa. Where'd you go? There you go. Looks like I've got a vertice, little rogue vertice there. I'll fix that after I make the UV unwrap. Alright. I think you can see, or what I'm doing now is I'm just going to be making the inside of the mouth separate from the outside. Yeah, this is very different from unwrapping a cube. I think this will probably give you an idea of why I did the whole cube unwrapping thing. I mean, it might have seemed like a rabbit trail to just do a thing on a cube, but it's because there's so much more to UV mapping, so I wanted you to just know how to do the fundamentals of it before I moved on into the actual Dolphin model. Okay, let's see. Okay, good job. There you go. So I'm in face select mode. I pressed L and it only selected the inside, which means that this has been done correctly. Oh, let me just deselect everything quickly. Sometimes if you don't, sometimes you can have like something way back here selected, and then you're zoomed in here and you don't realize it, and then you end up unwrapping those two things as the same mesh, and it just makes a mess. So make sure you have everything deselected before you select a new thing to unwrap. Wow, that's pretty terrible. I'm gonna have to clean that up, but I'm kind of reaching the limit for this video. So your assignment, so to speak, for today is to just figure out how you're going to cleanly unwrap the inside of the mouth. I will show you how I unwrap mine in the next video, and in the next video we should be getting on to putting actual textures onto this dolphin. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.